This time on No Not the Mind Probe, episode number 83, Silver Smiths.
Welcome to No Not the Mind Probe.
Ooh.
I was trying to do a Cyberman, but it sounded like an old lady.
Yeah, no,
You need that little voice modulation. No, not the Mind Probe.
Oh, come in and have here. Come in. We have some hard candies. The Cybermen are always trying to give you hard candies.
It is. That was their original power. Was they would give you 25-year-old Werther's originals?
Well, like from the bottom of their big handbags.
Yeah, and then you would become a Cyberman. But that was rewritten at a very late stage. I surprisingly made it through several drafts. But we don't give you candy at this podcast. We give you real facts.
No, and if anyone if anyone in a van comes by and tells you that they're with No Not the Mind Probe and there's candy inside that van and podcasts, don't go in.
True.
Don't do that.
Then that's stranger danger. You want to trust only your licensed probe dealer.
That's right.
Only talk to your licensed probe dealer because they're going to be giving you this podcast where we watch and rank every single Doctor Who story ever. My name is John Grant, and I'm a lifelong Doctor Who fan. I've been watching it for 38 years, people. That's a fact. You can put that in the bank.
That's right.
It won't get you anything. It's not worth anything, but you can put it in the bank and like a safe deposit box, I guess.
It's still like safe. It's safest to do that. But, and that's the Probetini, by the way, for those of you watching on YouTube.
It's a tiny one tonight, but it's there.
At Mind Probe Show, I believe, on YouTube. My name is Porter Mason. John's been asking me to watch Doctor Who for 26 years. A couple years ago, finally said yes. Our relationship could rent a car. So that's something. Each episode of this podcast, we look at two Doctor Who stories. We go through the newer in order. The second half, the second 50 yards.
Yep.
And then John acts as a sommelier and pairs that newer episode with a classic story. John, what are we going to look at today?
Well, if you like Cybermen,
I do.
Good. If you don't, then that's going to be bad news. Because it's a cyber. We're a Cyberman day. We're just some silver timing. I don't know whatever you do with silver. Because we are starting with Matt Smith and Clara, and for some reason, two random children, which don't seem to make a huge difference in the plot. In Nightmare in Silver. So we're coming in hot to the end of the Matt Smith season here, and we have paired that with a second Doctor, Jamie, and the very first Zoe story, the tightly paced Wheel in Space.
All right, we're gonna get started recapping these here things. This was Nightmare in Silver was the 7th series, episode number 12. It is story number 238. It aired in May 11th, 2013. You mentioned it's the 11th Doctor, Clara, and two kids who... See, what you forget is, remember, Doctor Who's made for kids. Not primarily anymore, but it is partly made for kids. And I tell you, as a owner of two children, I bought them myself. They are very excited when anything like them is in a show. They're like immediately like, "Oh, I'm interested now." So like they probably sprinkle in kids now and then just to keep kids interested.
Bam! It's like Emerald. Bam, bam, bam. You just throw in some kids. Yeah. Kids love that.
Even better if the kid looks like you. If the kid has your name, like. I mean, I kind of wish I could go back in time and name my kids more common names. Not that they're very uncommon, but like, it's so exciting for them when someone is named their name. So,
I mean, you've got unfortunately, you get the only Nellie I can think of is Nellie Olsen from the Little House on the Prairie, and that's not a great one.
No, there's very few Nellies. Nellie Bly is a historical figure, and then she was super psyched, and she's pretty interesting. She's like, she was a journalist, and
she was famously in Mr. Belvedere.
Yes, that's my story. But she was pretty interesting, and like she sort of went into these institutions and brought them down. She was kind of this rebel, and then we found out that she has the same birthday as my daughter, which was not planned. By the way, it was not planned.
And
then
your other daughter, Adolpha Hitler, She
Yes.
was also not a great choice at all.
There's not as many of those.
There's one, but we kind of, it's you gotta sit them down and break that to them.
And I didn't even realize, of course, the middle name Hitler, very hot right now. And then I didn't put the two together with the Adolfo one.
Right, you're just like, what's the chance? So you just go with a Hitler. I think that's Well, we're 5 minutes in and we're already on Hitler, so buckle up, folks.
This is all to say there are children in this episode.
Yeah, there are kids.
We have a clip which I will share with you now, pretty much.
Get out of my head! Stop rummaging in my mind!
Just you try and stop me. Ooh. Who's Clara? Why are you thinking about her so much?
Enough!
Fascinating. A complete mental block. Highly effective.
Relax, relax. If you just relax, you will find this a perfectly pleasant experience.
You are being upgraded and incorporated into the Siberia as a cyber planner.
Get out of my head!
What is this place? A network? A hive? You're getting signals from every Cyberman everywhere. How many of you are there?
Oh, this is brilliant. I'm so clever already, and now I'm 1,000,000 times more clever. And what a brain. Not a human brain, not even slightly human. I mean, I'm going to have to completely rework the neural interface, but this is going to be the most efficient cyber planner.
Not a great name, that, is it? I could call myself Mr. Clever.
Fulfilling the Matt Smith contractual obligation to once a season just have a scene where he plays against himself, right? He's just several Matt Smiths at a time. It's just like
I was gonna say Matt Smith had it on the way out. Is just doing some simple Dr. Light episodes. Not that much going on. I know he has a whole multiple scenes of him versus himself, and then also multiple scenes with the Cyberman. With his brain taken over, So and he acts as a distinctly different character in those scenes with Clara.
He gets to play evil, and he's having a great time.
So here's what's going on. First of all, they come to now. Correct me about this, because I'm going to describe something to you. If it's this is one of my least favorite futuristic sci-fi tropes, which is they're on a theme park. But is the whole planet a theme park, or are they just on a theme park on a planet?
It's called like something world. I feel like there could be the name of it doesn't feel like there's a bunch of other stuff on, and at the end they do blow up the entire planet without much of a thought. So hopefully there aren't like a whole bunch of other people else around it.
Because again, it's one of my least favorite things is when it's like, not that planets. I would imagine if we started becoming aware of a lot more planets in the universe, we would kind of, just as we do states and countries, you kind of boil them down to their main thing of like, Egypt has the pyramids and America has guns. I don't know whatever we are.
Grain waves, a lot of grain waves.
So, but in so much sci-fi, it's like, it's the forest planet, and it's like, well, it can't be all forests.
Ice planet of Hoth, which is all the whole planet is ice.
Fire planet. It's like Mario worlds, So it's funny.
So it's a giant theme park that is the size of an entire planet.
Well, anyway, either way, if it's not a whole planet, it is the most notable. To your point, the most notable thing on the planet was
doesn't
this
seem to be anything
park.
else on it. Yeah,
the Doctor takes Clara and the kids to this theme park. Be like, this will be fun. By the way, we at the end of the last episode, the kids just sort of. Clara
their way on it,
Clara not using like incognito mode and stuff like that. The kids just open up her computer and like, we clearly have found out everything about your adventures. Yeah. But the park is closed down and there's military folks there. First they meet
Webley, Mr. Webley.
Webley and Porridge. And they seem kind of like they're almost marooned there, like they're hiding out, right?
Yeah, Webley is like waiting for somebody to come get him. But it seemed like it seemed like no one was coming to this planet, but they also had a whole mechanical Turk sort of line going on there that somehow that was like they've been working on that routine.
Rides isn't the right, like show or whatever, I don't know, attractions was this. they rigged up an old out of work Cyberman to play you in chess, and then we find out it was like, well, actually, it's Porridge. Warwick Davis is playing Porridge, and he's just down there working the ropes and pulleys to make this happen.
But which is, again, it's like, this is a time when people travel in space to go to theme parks. Then they're like, what, a robot plays chess by itself?
Well, I imagine that it was more the novelty of like, oh, it's a Cyberman. Like they have something with that. I don't know. But anyway, what we find out is that there are a bunch of Cybermen kind of like attractions around.
Yeah.
But what it is that they're all deactivated. The Cybermen were defeated thousands of years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or something like that, a long time. And yeah, the military folks here are actually very topical, considering the Wagner troops in Russia. They are prisoners who are being sentenced to serve in the army,
and they're delightfully not. I love the redheaded guy, the nerdy redheaded guy.
Like
they're
the
delightfully
skinniest guy in the
soldiers.
world. These are like, this is a penal colony for like minor traffic violations or something. They don't feel like hardened criminals.
Not tough.
So a couple things happen. The doctor, I forget what the doctor and Clara get separated there, but we find out pretty quickly that the Cybermen are still here. And our favorite, the Cybermats. Ah, adorable Cybermats.
Yeah.
Although these are micro Cybermats,
yes,
right?
like little tiny ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like little silverfish, cyber silverfish,
yes.
right? Or something.
I know. Yeah, that's true. Because we have those in our house sometimes. I looked up how to get rid of them, and they were like, no, you cannot ever get rid of them. Because they literally, they eat like nothing. They don't, it's not like, oh, you better make sure you don't have any old food sitting around. It's like, no, they will eat dust and like nothing, air.
I mean, Warwick Davis could blow up your house. That's
that
always
could
an
happen.
option.
And we're always spraying for Warwick Davis's. So we're always doing that. We put down diatomaceous earth because he can't crawl through.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Diatomaceous earth. Yeah. So anyway, those guys are sort of still there. I'm a little confused by that, but then you find out kind of more later.
Mm-hmm.
They meet up with the military folks. The doctor does his what does he call that thing? The blank pass?
The psychic paper.
The psychic paper,
and immediately gets accepted. I was like, does not waste any time getting accepted on this one. It's just like, nope,
yes.
Whoop. And they're like, okay, good for you.
And they say that, and what it says, that what he finds out that it says is that he's been sent by the emperor who's missing currently.
Yeah.
So they're particularly like, oh, of course, right away. And he then leaves to go do something and puts Clara in charge of the entire unit.
Yeah, he's got some authority, and he's like, Clara's in charge, and she immediately becomes like a general, and she's like,
yes, I was gonna say Clara's like a real badass here. It's like a little unbelievable, but I also like how she's just so up for everything. And I think at that point we already knew, at least the kids were missing, whether or not she knew the
that they were trying to protect the kids in some way.
So I think she had some kind of adrenaline there going of like, I'm going to just take charge of this, because she does take charge. Yes, and we find out that the mini micro Cybermats have infected the kids. The Cybermen are here, and what they're doing is sending out these little Cybermats to kind of take over people's brains, and then they're going to revive the army. Playing the long game here, the Cybermen, as they often do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they're very common.
So one of them infects the doctor, which gives us this thing, which at first they're not sure if they're not going to be able to take over a non-human, and it sort of doesn't, right? The doctor is able to fight back against it. At one point, when they get taken over, a bit of android-like machinery goes over like one eye, is how you can
easy little Borg light goes on.
Borg light, yeah, exactly. Yeah. A Borg for just like if you're on vacation, don't want to like take the whole thing, like it's nice. And he can temporarily short circuit it by putting gold on it. I wanted to actually read up more about this, like how gold affects circuitry. It seemed to be something based in something, but
so we have not watched Revenge. So the Cybermen, unfortunately for them, have developed a litany of vulnerabilities over time. Turned out to be various different things. And at one point, it was discovered that gold was inimical to Cybermen. plates their breathing apparatus, which also doesn't make any sense because they don't breathe. Anyway, it's the thing that doesn't work out. So yes, he uses gold on some level to harm them.
And what I like about that, and I think another thing where, at one point, Clara gets them into, they're in a theme park, so there's a castle in the theme park. So at one point she says, she's like, wait, can Cybermen walk through water? And they're like, no, they're electric. He's like, let's all get in the castle and pull the moat up. And both in that case and the case of the gold, these Cybermen actually learn and move forward and innovate, which I thought was really nice, because it wasn't just the standard, like let's punch them. I mean, I'm thinking of Centaurans, but like, let's hit them in the right spot there, and that's always,
we're done. Yay.
Right spot in the back of the neck. Anyway, there's lots of, the Doctor is sort of trying to defeat them from within the consciousness. He's sort of trying to,
he's playing chess, right? He has to beat. He thinks if he can beat it at chess somehow,
right?
It's like a bet, kind of, right?
Right, because he's sort of playing the Cyberman, the cyber planner, right? The cyber intelligence, so that if you can sort of defeat that, like almost a virus, it'll then go back and stop everything. And then at the same time, Clara and the soldiers are. Again, this is what confused me about Porridge and what's his name, because then they seem to actually be part of the military crew. It's a little confusing.
Yeah,
like,
I'm not quite
they
sure.
seem to be sort of an outcast part of the crew, because
the crew knew them, or certainly knew who they were. Like,
there seemed to be a history there because when Clara took over, he was like, in Porridge knew that Clara was like on his side or whatever. I don't know, was friendly with him. Then he sort of. It felt like he'd been kicked out or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but they didn't know who Porridge really was.
They didn't. So so by the end, they defeat the Cybermen. The Doctor, but the combination of the Doctor and Clara, a couple nice moments of like they're defeated once just in time, just as the Cybermen are about to strangle them, all that stuff. And then we find out that Porridge is actually the missing Emperor. And who is the one who puts it together? Is it Clara?
It's one of the kids. It's one of the little girl sees it on the coin or something. Like, it's obviously him.
She's like, this is so obvious. How's no one noticing this? Right, the kids are. I forgot to mention. By the way, everyone watching for the kid. The kids are fine. Everybody's
the kids are brutally slaughtered halfway through. It was a really dark moment.
Right. I meant they're fine in that their legacy lived on and they're remembered well. So they died not in vain. No, they're fine. And yes, and we find out he's the Emperor, and as the Emperor, he's able to then transport everybody out. And it's a nice
like a protocol. There's some protocol to it.
And there's some nice. The way it all wraps up has some nice twists and turns to it that I thought were enjoyable. And then he proposes to Clara.
Yeah,
back on the ship,
which.
Who
not wrong. Yeah.
Who wouldn't?
Wrong.
Yeah. And Clara, I love it. This is the Emperor of like not the universe, but a good portion of a galaxy. Is like, you know what? I'm really busy right now. I'm just so busy, and I am
traveling. Just started this traveling in time. I don't know how many marriage proposals I'm gonna get from emperors, but I probably should play the field.
Yeah. So she says no to like essentially running half the universe. And
but in a nice way. She says in a really nice way.
Oh yeah, totally.
She's not like ew, and then just turns and like, let's go. Yeah.
No, and I sort of liked him as Emperor. It's not like they shared a big connection. They got along fine. But he was just kind of like, I like the way you're working. How about you marry me? Come on,
cut of your jib. Which is what you said to Mrs. Probe when you were like, I like the cut of your jib. And she's like, well, what does that mean? And
that's right.
It was love ever since.
So yeah. That's that. But yeah, I enjoyed this. I'd said a few episodes. What was remind me, and I think part of the reason I enjoyed this is that like this was kind of like a sci-fi episode, and I thought they did it well. I thought the twist of the Emperor, what I liked was it was a twist, but it tied into how they ultimately like ended the plot, and like I don't know, it just like worked together nice. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, this is Neil Gaiman again, famous for stuff. Good Omens, the one about the superhero was it called? American Gods. Yeah,
Sandman.
And people were a little disappointed in this one because I think he also wrote The Doctor's Wife, the one with the TARDIS coming alive, and that was obviously very good episode, and so some people felt like this is a bit of a letdown. I think this is a serviceable episode. Trying to do something with the Cybermen, make them a little scary, intimidating. They're faster. They're little cyber mites. They have detachable heads and hands that can attack you. And, I think doing a little bit more with them, which is a nice attempt to make them exciting. Matt Smith, you got 2 Matt Smiths, of course, so you've got a good Matt
For
Smith.
the price of one.
And always, Matt Smith acting is always a good thing. Warwick Davis is very good, of course, famous for playing Wicket, the Ewok. He was also in Willow. He was the main character in Willow. Has he done Star Wars as well? Because that's the nerd.
Yes, he has.
Nerd Triple Crown is.
Well, wait, what do you mean? No, Ewok. The Ewok is Star Wars.
Oh, sorry, Star Trek. He's done Star Trek as well.
Oh.
That is the nerd trifecta. Is Doctor Who, Star Trek.
I will take a look while you're looking.
Simon Pegg has done it.
He's in Narnia. Do we get the Chronicles of Narnia and counting it? Oh, yeah. But he's Harry Potter. He's in Harry Potter.
Oh yeah, he's in Harry Potter. Yeah. He's in. Apparently, he's also in a very funny show with Ricky Gervais.
Yes,
that is I have not seen, but he plays sort of a exaggerated version of himself in that show, I think, right?
Yeah.
He's one of the
he's hilarious, yeah. And then there's the new Willow.
Yeah, there's another with the Willow series.
He works a ton. I mean, he's great.
Yeah.
And
he's very good.
He was also in he was in Merlin, but that's not what I was thinking of. He is in that's more Star Wars. No, that's not what I'm interested in. No, I'm interested in something else. Oh gosh, Life's Too Short is the Ricky Gervais show.
Yeah, of course, he gave a stunning performance as President Dwight D. Eisenhower in a biopic.
He's in Celebrity Squares. That's not what I'm thinking of. Anyway, he's in a lot of stuff, and he's great. And he's coming on the show right now. Warwick Davis, everybody.
He's very good here because I think, again, I know him from. I grew up with him as in Willow. Certainly, I remember seeing that movie when that came out because that was very exciting. And then, we never saw his face, but I think for some reason we all did know that he was the Ewok. He was the main Ewok, the cutest one that befriends Princess Leia in Return of the Jedi.
So sorry, this is what I'm trying to remember related to Doctor Who. He's in the film version of The Hitchhiker's Guide. He's actually the body of Marvin the Paranoid
Marvin the Paranoid, yeah, who's voiced by the fantastic Alan Rickman, yeah. The children are pretty pointless. It's really, they made a big deal about they clearly had to write a coda to the last story to get the kids on the TARDIS.
Right. Like, they clearly wanted them there.
Yeah, and then they're there, and it's just like, and they're not particularly necessary because they get taken over about halfway through. One who sort of plays the unconvincing spoiled kid routine, right? She's like, I'm not that excited, or this is lame. I just want my phone, or something like that. And it's like, it's not convincing in this context.
Do they become characters?
Nope, never see them again.
Really?
We never hear from them again.
The only thing I can think is the only thing I can think is because it was so intentional, and then. Not really. You needed someone there that they were rescuing.
Yeah.
And it gave Clara a little bit more stakes. The only thing I can think of is that, it just didn't work that well with them. And they're like, okay, never mind. They maybe downplayed it and then just moved on.
Because I feel like by the time we start the Peter Capaldi era, if I'm remembering, unless I'm missing something, if I'm remembering right, it's just kind of, she lives alone. Like they disappear entirely. That entire family disappears. They are just not even in their life anymore.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it is because clearly, again, everything's so planned out, and Stephen Moffat plans multiple seasons out in advance. It's sort of like, how did you? I don't know if they weren't working out as actors. Again, trying to shoehorn kids into a storyline can always be difficult. I do think the Deus Ex Machina. It has a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina ending, right? There's a little bit of a. Oh, don't worry, we're all going to get rescued because we set off the bomb and we're all been zapped out and the planet's going to blow up and everybody's like, oh, that worked out well.
I guess. I guess, again, I liked the moment of having the Emperor and that little decision that he's make was like, well, I get to go.
Yeah.
I don't need to take all of you. And then just kind of that little back and forth of it. So, I don't know.
It looks good. It's a good story. It looks good, and it's a solid. Well, it's a solid Cyberman story. Although, again, and this is the common criticism of Cyberman. We'll talk about the next story too. They just don't. they're just kind of robots. Like it's like the Cybermen has an interesting story of how they're created and what they are, and rarely do they get used that way. It's like the idea of them converting people is their most sort of, they're going to turn people into Cybermen. That is their most compelling trait, and it's so rarely used. I mean, I guess they're kind of doing it here, but it's sort of like
I guess like I just like the Cybermen. It's weird. They're probably my favorite of the repeat enemies. I'm not a big Dalek person. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a Dalek. Just to be clear,
he's not, folks. If you are not watching, you cannot see that Porter is not a Dalek. I don't know why he's been holding that sing plunger in his hand the entire time we've been doing this episode, but he's not a Dalek.
No, but I like them. And part of it might be the simple thing of like I like old school 50s robots. Sci-fi, and they're just robot. I don't mind when they're just robot. I like when they're more complicated. Like I think it was the end of season 1, maybe, where there was a whole thing. I think it was Mickey and Rose with some Cybermen.
The parallel Earth. Yeah.
Like,
let's
I enjoyed
put a pin
that
in this and come back to this because this might be the theme.
Okay. Well, anyway, then let's move on to our classic episode. Our classic episode also notably featured Cybermen. And little else. No, actually a lot else. It was called The Wheel in Space, like a flying saucer. It was season 5.
Like a top in space.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, a gyroscope. Season 5 of the original series, and it was story number 7. It was only the 43rd Doctor Who story ever, so they really hadn't
still getting in the groove. They hadn't
figured
quite
things
nailed
out
it yet.
It was blessedly 6 episodes, as we mentioned.
Well, it gives you real time to breathe.
Yeah. It aired the 27th of April to the 1st of June, 1968.
What? No one was alive then.
It aired on BBC, notably. I just want to know. And we have the second,
rare BBC airing. Yeah,
that's right. We have the second Doctor. We have Jamie. Jamie's been on here Jamie's been on like a season at this point. And then we also have Zoe, who I think I have seen one other time.
Yeah, she's in the Dominators, the War Games. She was the second half of the Patrick Troughton years. But yeah, this is the beginning.
She is given a huge amount of screen time to introduce herself.
Yes, we get to know her well.
But here we go. Here's a clip from. Oh, and we should mention, if you're following along with us and haven't watched it, this is one of these where we really just have the sound, except for a third of the episodes.
2 episodes we have a full video.
So, but it is all on BritBox for those of you watching it that way.
Exclusively on BritBox. You cannot actually get this on DVD.
This is another one.
It's audio I've had, but you could the special version it was an enticement for us to get you on the BritBox.
Oh boy,
you haven't signed up yet. Get on that BritBox,
and you'll want to stay a subscriber because this is a rewatchable. You just watch this over and over.
Yeah, you don't want to lose access to it.
All right. Anyway, here we go. Here is a clip from The Wheel in Space.
And what do you do here, Zoe?
I'm an astrophysicist, pure mathematics major.
With honors.
Oh, I am impressed.
We use Zoe as our second opinion.
You didn't answer my question.
What question?
You know, I'm surprised you didn't know the answer. Now, don't tell me there's something you can't work out.
How did you pilot the rocket ship? You see, I've calculated its original course. It was a service and supply ship for number 5 station, overdue and presumed lost 9 weeks ago. Well, the rocket couldn't have drifted 87 million miles off course.
So what's your theory?
Well, there's a record of the last contact with the Silver Carrier rocket. It had 7 million miles to touchdown and enough fuel for 20 million. Well, it couldn't have drifted here off course in the time involved. It must have been driven and piloted.
Oh, a right wee space detective.
There's only one solution. That rocket was refueled in space, provided with at least another 12 fuel rods.
Well, it's an interesting theory.
Oh, it isn't a theory. You can't disprove the facts. It's pure logic.
Logic, my dear Zoe, merely enables one to be wrong with authority.
A classic second.
A great line. Yeah. But for the first 2 minutes of the clip, if you like that, there's about 3.5 hours more of that.
If you like people describing very basic rudimentary actions, there's a lot of scenes of control rooms of people going, turn on this for 10.3 seconds. 9, 8, 7.
Let's put it this way. I was hoping someone would reroute power or something that I could really just dig my teeth into.
But if you ever need to pilot a space wheel, I think you could do it. I mean, the mechanics are here. The nuts and bolts of it are all here.
This is so back in the 40s and 50s. There's lots of cool conceptual art and real scientists who thought of what are all the ways we, of course, in the 50s and definitely the 60s, we thought like human conquest of space was like imminent and happening like soon. We'd be very disappointed in where we've gotten to at this point, which is mainly we've
Elon
launched
Musk.
a lot of satellites to like get us to watch ESPN better. Like that's mainly
we
what
really
we've done.
Want to tweet more.
But they've designed all these space stations, and this is definitely a common design, is this wheel. In fact, in 2001, I believe they're on one of these.
The Ark in Space is a wheel.
Because it provides the centripetal force provides like a gravitational thing to it. So that's
right. It creates an artificial gravity, right? It should be
So-
hurled against the wall.
So I would say for me, the saving grace of this whole story is it's kind of a cool, that era of sci-fi thing. I just sort of enjoyed the trappings of it a little bit, but it's pretty
Lashings
boring.
of sci-fi.
Yeah, like a side of sci-fi in here. Anyway, the TARDIS is marooned. The TARDIS is just like always on the side of the road with like steam coming out. Needs a new tire.
In particular, this is the second time. This is David Whittaker, who was there in the early days too. And this happened in the early one too. Is marooned because it's out of mercury. It needs that. It's got to get that mercury, and they don't have any spare mercury.
Yeah, I don't know, like oh no, I threw the mercury out with the pad thai last night.
We should have some more mercury, I guess. Like, do you have any thermometers we could break open?
And then you cut to like Jamie with mercury running down the side of his mouth. Like, sorry, I ate the last mercury.
What I love is, and it's a line here, and it's also in the early ones too, where it's like, they'll just get to some like tiny little spaceship or something. It's like Jamie will be like, "Well, there's got to be some mercury here." It's like, no, there doesn't.
No, there doesn't.
Why would you say that? Like,
well, one thing I love about Jamie is that he, they write him so well because he comes from. I think they did this pretty well with Leela too, but like he's so out of time with everything, but he never really understands what's going on, but he understands enough to be like, come on, like do the thing where you go in there and then something happens. I don't really get it, but like, yeah, go get the mercury for me. If you need mercury, we're on another one of these space things. They must have mercury. and often he says something kind of ridiculous like that. And the doctor's like, well, you are right, but
yeah, you kind of have it. Sure.
Well, anyway, so they're kind of marooned. They're brought onto this spaceship. When they're brought on, the doctor is concussed, so he's not available to talk. So Jamie's kind of having to represent who they are and whatever, and he's not sure what he's supposed to say. They kind of grill him. They are these are humans on this space station from some sort of, I don't know if they say the year.
Perfectly multi-ethnic set of humans, each of whom, I mean, just by the time Flanagan, the Irish guy, gets on there, he's like, "Oh, you be wanting to have a fight, do you?" Oh boy! Like,
well, as we know,
he might have been wearing a green hat with a clover on it.
As we know, the British Isles are really those are the only ones who will be spacefaring folks.
No, this one they've got the guy from South America. They got Chang. I mean, everyone's got a specific name, and it's just like, oh boy. Anyway,
was there the Jamaican guy here too?
No, I don't know, but there was.
I know. I'm thinking of a different
Toberman from the. He was. That was not a good one.
I'm thinking of next week's podcast.
Oh,
anyway.
Oh yes.
In 2 weeks rather. So anyway, Jamie kind of lies to them about what's going on. He and the TARDIS is essentially in the
in the silver carrier.
Yes,
yeah.
So
the other
he's right. So he's like doesn't want them to destroy that. And it's a supply vessel that's 80 million miles off course, which they say a lot, but I just want to say, and they're like, this could never have why this is 80 million miles, but it's like, but if you're in space and there are these spaceships, you get like one hundredth of a degree off, and then things are on autopilot, you could be 80 million miles. I just don't think
you get the
this is
wrong
unreasonable.
exit ramp, and then the next thing you know, you're on a bypass and you just can't get off.
I think what's more unusual, maybe, but not necessarily, is that it could be 80 million miles, of course, but it would be a coincidence as 80 million miles and intersecting with your path, because you would just you're all out in this vastness of space.
It's totally random.
Whatever. Maybe it hones in on others. Whatever.
Look, I mean, in this case,
they don't know what
actually,
they're doing.
Of course, it's deliberately, intentionally, actually about it.
Yes. Okay. So it's not. We see the medic, who we see her do a bunch of stuff, essentially like lie detector type things that she feels
Gemma
out.
Corwin. Yeah.
We see, I think, was he the captain who was real gruff?
Jarvis. Yeah. Jarvis. Who is, this is again the classic archetype of Doctor Who, of the base under siege, right? You got the whole, but
yes.
Jarvis is just immediately insane. Like, he's just it's not like a ramp up. He's just like, he just completely loses it, and just gets worse through the whole thing. But he's always sort of unhinged for no readily apparent reason.
He's very stressed, I think. And then we have the lovely Zoe. So I guess I could have misheard this too, and maybe this was more of like they were just criticizing her. I thought they were describing her as a robot.
Like a robot, they said. She's the idea. It's hinted at here. It's never really developed, but that she maybe belonged to like a society, or like a particular went to a particular school or something that trained you to be trained you to be a genius. Or she's kind of
just like very analytical,
and very logical and all that kind of stuff. And it's not clear. It's kind of hinted at that it's like almost a cult, or like even Gemma's kind of like, it's not the greatest thing to do to a child, but whatever, you're already here. And it's like but there's some hinting that she is just a normal human, but she was brought up as a genius, and that was fostered, and she was supposed to be not emotional in a way. Yeah.
Well, which is a good character to have on when the Cybermen are attacking.
Yeah, there's a nice contrast.
But I'm not going to go into detail on the rest of this plot because it's so just drudgery. I mean, basically, we find out that it's populated with Cybermen. That's why they're there. They're coming to take. They're coming to take over, basically, but they're doing various things to do it. And there's a lot of talk of like, but they're doing this, but why would they do that? But what if it's this? Well, clearly it's this, and that's not right. And then there's no the action of it is like 5 minutes, but like they just talk about what might happen for a long time.
And then there's detailed scenes of showing them actually like doing the boring parts of it. Like, now we're gonna put the boxes in the box. And like, okay, put that in the box. No, so this is a famously convoluted plot. So I'm gonna try to see if I can remember it. So the Cybermen wants to take over the wheel, because that they can use that to take over Earth somehow. It's not 100% clear how. So they need to invade the wheel. So they take over the Silver Carrier spaceship 80 million miles away, and then they kill all the crew, I guess, and set it on a course that puts it eventually at the wheel, hiding 2 Cybermen on board and the servo robot, who will go back to servo robot, the little robot at the beginning.
Right. Who then, actually gets the TARDIS and
and then let's see, the spaceship, the Silver Carrier, drifts close to the wheel, and then shoots out the Cybermats, little bubbles that go into the wheel. The plan is that the Cybermats are going to get on the wheel. They're going to eat the baranium rods that fuel the laser beam. And then the Cybermen apparently have the power to cause a sun to go supernova or something like that.
Oh, yeah, right.
Diverts meteorites towards the space wheel. But now their lasers out of action because they don't have any baranium rods. So they're going to scan the Silver Carrier and see, it might have some baranium on it. So then
they'll go to the Silver Carrier.
Go that, and then the Cybermen will hide themselves underneath the baranium boxes. I think I'm saying this right.
But the only reason they didn't blow up the Silver Carrier in the first place is because Jamie told them not to. So they would have had to known that.
There's a slight flaw on the planet.
Because when they came, basically they were about to blow it up because they're like, we don't know what this is, and we're correctly suspicious of it.
Yeah,
like, we're just going to blow this up.
Yeah,
and then Jamie's like, no, please don't, because the TARDIS is there. So
I'm not. Maybe they thought that the Cybermans would have destroyed the laser before that was going to happen anyway. Anyway, then yes, so the idea was then they're going to bring the Cybermen are going to hide in the bottom of the boxes. They're going to bring them over. Then the Cybermen are going to be able to, I guess, open the doors when the spacewalking Cybermen come. Which is, by the way, the spacewalk scene is hilarious because it's just people like clearly just in a studio like doing this. Like
it reminded me of those old commercials where they'll be like, no one will be admitted during the thrilling spacewalk sequence, because it's just so, I mean, yeah, anyway.
They're just kind of walking casually towards it. Yes, so that is the Cybermen's plot. It's absurdly complicated, and it's defeated within minutes.
And when they finally sort of determine what it is, I think it's in conversation with, is that the conversation with Zoe that we played? Because I just remember when it's finally explained parts of it, she's like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, she's a very analytical one, and she's like, why would they do that? That's not a good way to do it. And they're like, aha, but Zoe, you must take into account. But by the way, I've pinpointed what the second Doctor reminds me of in his, when he gets very like mincy and worried. And it's from It's a Wonderful Life. This is a deep cut from It's a Wonderful Life, but it's Mary Hatch's mother. It's Donna Reed's mother. And if you remember the scene, she's at home with her mother, and George Bailey's drunk and's coming over, and she's like excited to see George. And her mother just keeps going, Mary, Sam Wainwright's on the phone. Don't you want to? Oh. And then she goes and off and kisses George Bailey and stuff. It's like, that's what Patrick Troughton sounds like to me.
That is a very deep cut.
He keeps going like, oh no, Jamie, you can't do that. Like, it's so, he's like the hero. And I mean, this is part of the show, but he's like the hero, but he's so worried. He is the least in command of all the Doctors.
It's true. Yeah, he's totally, and yet totally
he's endearing, but I mean, it's funny.
He's very flirty with Gemma Corwin, the Doctor in this. There's kind of a little chemistry there. This is the first time that we get John Smith, which Jamie names him. Also, it's the first time this pseudonym is used.
I thought that was going to come back around, by the way, that like what John Smith Enterprises was, or more about that.
If they were modern Doctor Who, yes, he'd end up being the CEO of it or something like that.
Yeah, like 10 episodes later, that would be like, like a Bad Wolf situation. Yeah.
Not here. For some reason, and I don't know, maybe it was better when you could see it in motion. People really get into the servo robot, which is the...
It's fun.
It was an interesting design. And then we have the very... and this is the only time this has ever happened, and it's rare. I mean, I don't know. I can't think of any other TV show that has done this. So at the end, when Zoe sneaks onto the TARDIS, the Doctor like puts on a little tiara, and he's like, "Oh, well, let me show you what life is like with us." And then this leads into a repeat of Evil of the Daleks, which we've watched. Right, that was the one where they meet Victoria for the first time.
So that's okay.
So the next episode after this is Evil of the Daleks. They repeat it. They repeated that whole episode as if he was but he's showing it to her.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, right. It's a really weird. And then they don't. It's not like they had bookended at the end of it. That next one.
Wait, it had already aired. They just showed it again.
Yeah, they wanted. It was a classic. I guess people liked it. They wanted to show a repeat, and they felt like we gotta have a reason. We can't just show a repeat. What are we, animals? We have to have some kind of framing device. And so, yes, famously, this is an in-universe repeat, which apparently it's like the Doctor's just broadcasting, in his head. He's got famous episodes.
I like who is like, but applied with a narrative form. Like, he went a long way to set it up. Aired in, by the way, this is 1968, and I was going to say about the Dr. Gemma, I forgot her last name.
Corwin, yeah.
Corwin was a very, like, I don't know, I think a little bit ahead of its time, like, very in control female scientist.
I really liked her, and and they kill her off, which is sad. Although I also love that they kill her at the end of episode 5, and then they clearly did not want to bring the actress back the next week. So the scene where they find the body, they just very obviously cut to a still photograph of her. So like, oh my God, it's Gem, and then it's just like, lying on the floor. I was like, it would be almost as bad as if they just had her on vacation. Like, oh, it's Gemma. She's like waving in the beach.
Dame, 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 beep, beep, dame, dame, beep, beep, dame, dame. This is, by the way, you guys might not like that. Robots love that song.
Yeah, that was
robots
are
actually love it.
jamming right now. There are a lot of jamming robots right now.
We are adherents of the repeating themes here in No
We
Not
are.
the Mind Probe. We like to talk about ideas and people and things that are threaded throughout Doctor Who and our very culture. John, what possibly did you want to talk about with these? How are these episodes linked?
Let's talk about the color silver.
Oh,
is it any good or not? Would
when
you
get a
put
silver
it in your
crayon?
house?
That's very exciting.
Yeah, it was a big time. No, let's talk about the Cybermen. It's been a while, and you repeatedly assert that they're your favorites.
I love them.
So we got to deal with that nonsense.
I love them so much. I love them. It just means so much to me.
He's verklempt. He's verklempt. Yes. All right. So, what do you love about the Cybermen? So, the Cybermen. So, we've now watched. Let's see what we've. I'm going to do a quick inventory here. We've seen Tomb of the Cybermen. We have seen Wheel in Space. Now we have seen Earthshock. We have actually. Maybe we haven't seen that many Cybermen. I'm trying. We haven't done the 10th Planet yet. I don't think.
They're usually in the title, right?
We've got Rise of the Cybermen. We've seen that, which is the new series, and we've seen a bunch of appearances now. Oh, I guess we haven't seen a ton.
Well, the new
with
series there was a many episode arc with the Cybermen.
Right, and then Doomsday, they come in and they face off against the Daleks, and yeah, there was a two-parter with Rose and Nikki.
But the old ones, I mean, like I loved Tomb.
Yeah.
What are the others? Yeah.
So they made their first appearance at the very end of the Hartnell years, which I don't think
we watched that one. Right?
Yeah, we haven't watched that one yet because that's they're very rudimentary in that. Very rudimentary. They're famously they change their appearance every single episode. They're slightly upgraded, which I think is now at the time it wasn't intentional. It was like the last costume fell apart. We try to do this better, but now it's become sort of like that's part of the thing. They upgrade or whatever. They've been reasonably consistent. But yeah, I mean, their sort of key thing is they were people who like us who kept upgrading themselves through various surgeries with cybernetic pieces, and then eventually they replaced their brains with computers, and they became the Cybermen. And then their drive is to survive, and they survive by converting more people into Cybermen. And so that is their raison d'être, if I'm saying it right.
Mm-hmm.
But often they become robots. They're just, as you say, I think they're very 1950s robots.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you like about the Cybermen? Explain yourself.
Yeah, they're 1950s where you think of as like just like tin can robots, not like they've although this happens especially with the modern Cybermen stories where they're able to sort of take over a human and it becomes more like an android or with human like features. But no, yeah, these are just the like big old Tin Man suit from Wizard of Oz robots. I like them because it reminds me more of like the Borg from Star Trek, where it's just sort of relentless.
Yeah, okay, sort of a zombie thing going.
Yeah, they can't really be killed. Right, exactly. They're kind of robot zombies, so there's not the grotesque and like messiness of it. There's like they just don't stop coming. You can't defeat all the Cybermen, even though you can very easily defeat them. Usually by the end,
gold,
in a very
plastic makeup,
right, or like
radiation,
right, or like this. I feel like there's also in the modern ones the Independence Day like thing of like we'll upload a virus to them.
Yeah, a cell phone virus. Yeah,
but you never really defeat them, like, because how could you? I mean, they're just it seems impossible. I'm interested to know more about the origin, because is there anything living at the origin of them? Or
so it feels like it was done in, so this was 1965. I think they first appeared 66, and it feels like it was written as a sort of a warning, like so basically the idea is they just kept upgrading themselves with bionic limbs and all things like that until, again, there's just no human parts left, is sort of the idea.
So they were
Which, again, is that a thing we're worried about? Like, is it just, are we worried that that's really gonna happen to us?
That, like, speaking of a previous episode that we're like, gonna ship of Theseus ourselves
Yeah.
into like a. Well, I think there was a thing at the time of like, oh, am I man or machine anymore? I mean, that was a common, and maybe still is a common
what makes us who
sci-fi
we are.
thing.
Could we be replaced by machines as like workers and things like I could see? So maybe it's a
Topical.
metaphor. Yeah, I mean, are they simply Chat GPT? Ahead of its time, I think. You know, if they were writing press releases, like an episode with the press release of the Cybermen, and people are like, no.
That's what the new cyber. That's what in this new series of Doctor Who should be about: large language models that Cybermen just get into, or that Cybermen just get into like social media ads and stuff like that. That's like very software. But I mean, I do think
calling you and selling you aluminum siding. Would you like to buy siding? Like,
that was the big fear of any kind of robotics or computer intelligence back then, was always in this idea of that it would animate like Frankenstein and then come to life. But yeah, now our fear is much more about the software side of it. I guess the Matrix was I mean, well, that's much more recent, but I'm saying like that was more, it was more of the software thing there too, where it was like the software, but then that would take over, I guess, in the Matrix was like it would take over these military things, and then so I don't know. Yeah, I like the relentlessness of it. I like that it's not attached to, I mean, they're trying to conquer everything, but it's just so soulless. They're just like, we're just moving forward. We're just,
why are you conquering? Because it's there, right? And it's not
like something about that is more palatable to me than the Daleks, where it's just like I have to believe like there's just this race of awful things, like, well, they're just raised to be terrible, where it's like this I can just believe
they just logically think the only way we're going to continue is if we just take it. We're improving
what we're supposed to do. We're improving everything. Yes.
It does drift a little bit back and forth, but I like it. I think their motivation is things are broken, we're improving them. I mean, if you think about that, that is, you could easily make that analogy to tech today, right? It's like everything's wrong, we're fixing it, we're making it better. It's like
right.
Really? They're shiny. Obviously, you like that.
They're shiny.
I love shiny stuff.
I hadn't really thought about the different looks each time, but they're fun. The Cybermats have grown on me. In the Tomb of Cyber, the Cybermats were the funniest, silliest, stupidest things. In both of these, they're kind of fun. The Cybermites are really fun.
Yeah, the Cybermats are interesting. The Cybermats got a little more to do here in this current one.
Sorry to interrupt, but I still remember in the Tomb of the Cybermen where they were like, God bless the actors in those scenes who had to be like deathly afraid of them. Like, oh my God, we're surrounded. And there was like 4 of them, and they could easily have stepped between them. I remember those.
Who knows what kind of power they have? They're the nice thing too, I think, and you see this in both of these episodes, is they are reasonably easy to realize on screen, so you can have a lot of them. They can go upstairs, which, you know, after the Daleks, they were like, hey, that turns out to be a thing that's important to design a monster. So they can move fairly easily, and the costumes are reasonably priced enough that you can have a large amount of them on the screen, which is also, it does make a difference versus the Daleks when there's like clearly 3 of them like trying to hide them. So that does give them a little bit more of adds that relentless, hey, there's a mass of these things that you can't play.
By the way, when you said the first one was when?
The 10th Planet. So it should be 1966, I think.
Okay. And then because the Tomb of the Cybermen wasn't that many, was it just like a year before?
Yeah, so let's see, there's 10th Planet.
Yeah, it was a year before.
Yep, and then the 10th Planet, and then there's the Moon Base, which also has the Cybermen, and that's a Ben and Polly.
This is a very Cybermen heavy. This must have been of the time.
The second Doctor has the most encounters with the Cybermen, because we still got there's the Moon Base we haven't watched yet.
We did, by the way, we did watch the 10th Planet.
Oh, we did. Oh, yeah,
that's the last first
Doctor. Yeah. There's the Moon Base still to come, and then the Invasion, which is another unit one. So the Cybermen fight the Brigadier.
Maybe that's why I like it too. I like Patrick Troughton and Jamie, and
yeah. I mean, Jamie's in all of them. He knows who they are. Obviously, in this one, which is kind of. Although, yeah. So it's this is their heyday, and then they do not appear at all for the third Doctor. He blanked on the Cybermen, and then you only get one Tom Baker, one Peter Davison, you get one the rest of the way out.
Well, that's John. That's why I like the Cybermen, but you don't have to take my word for it.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh,
all right.
Well, we got through that one.
Yeah, we did it.
We got through it. We did it. John, there are 300 official Doctor Who television stories. We're rapidly approaching where that won't be the case, but that's still the case right now. And by the way, in Doctor Who news, I think this is news, Doctor Who has broken through enough in the news cycle that Mrs. Probe was aware of the new Doctor on the way. And then so I was like, oh, well, let me tell you what I know about it. I did name him as a Doctor, but then this is happening. We don't know this yet.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
All these things, but she actually heard about it.
Well, you know why? Because the women, they love Ryan Gosling, and the Ryan Gosling, big Doctor Who fan. It turns out I texted you this, but they announced Ncuti Gatwa as a up and coming Doctor. And he's been admitted to the university. He hasn't shown up yet for his orientation, but he's incoming class of doctors. And he was working on the Barbie movie when he got the role. And when it was announced, apparently Ryan Gosling just came running over to his trailer and was like, "Oh, I love Doctor Who. It's the greatest show in the world." Wow. And there you go. So women now will immediately start flocking to Doctor Who because they do anything. Because that Ryan Gosling, he's a handsome fella. He's a good-looking fellow.
Good-looking guy. He's Ken in the new Barbie movie. John and I were just discussing that we are interested in seeing this.
Yeah, because we're grown men.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go with a 8-year-old child.
Me too, but I don't know who that one is yet.
Yeah, we'll find somebody. Well, we were discussing brief Barbie sidebar.
Yeah.
Discussing because it's hard to tell from the trailer. Like, it's clearly made to be funny for adults, but it's PG-13. So my daughter's 8. She loves Barbie, and I'm like, I'm happy to take you to it, and you just be like, yeah, that wasn't for me. I'm not sure about it, but I don't want to take you if there's going to be a lot of like weird sex jokes. And one of the first trailers had like a only really funny as like them being unaware of the sort of sex joke that they're making.
Yeah.
But I've read a little bit more about it, and it seems like it'll be little kids will like it.
I mean, your daughter's 8, so she's gonna start having sex in a couple years anyway, right?
God. So, dear God,
you might as well just get it, rip that Band-Aid off.
We're gonna have the talk right after Barbie, in the middle of Barbie.
You're gonna ask them to stop. Hey, could you pause it for a second? We got to have a conversation here, and we're
gonna pause on this frame of Barbie. Now zoom in and enhance. All right, let's talk about the human body.
Daddy, is this a typical woman? Yep.
I'll say yes. I'll say well, my daughter, if you don't grow up to be Margot Robbie, you're screwed.
Yeah, forget it.
Basically, like, this is it. And she's actually, but you don't look like Ryan Gosling. You're like, you're right.
Press conference is over.
All right. I don't know where we were, but I think I'm ranking
Doctor Who.
Here's the deal. I really like Nightmare in Silver.
All right.
I really enjoyed it. I like Cyberman. Really liked Warwick Davis. Thought that he was great. The kids were an unneeded distraction, though thankfully they were just like turned into robots and then
immediately shunted away. Yep,
I liked the weird little penal colony. I just really enjoyed this whole thing. So I ranked it pretty high. I have it 14.
Ooh, wow, that's very high.
Yeah, I just really enjoyed this.
Are you okay?
It hit for me one of those where it's like I would rewatch this. Like, this is just fun. I like this type of story, and I thought it was a really good Clara episode. Obviously, a good Matt Smith episode.
Yeah. It is a good Clara.
Just really fun. So that's that. The Wheel in Space, I can tell that you didn't like it that much, and I didn't like it that much either. But I probably have it ranked way higher than you, partly because, again, I said I just kind of like the trappings of this kind of space story, and I liked Zoe okay. I was actually more interested if she actually had, in fact, been a robot. Like a Data type situation. But at any rate, I ranked it at 98.
Okay.
Just below the 3 Doctors, above Colony in Space, kind of in that era. Again and again, I think we'll pick at the end of this, the end of all this madness of this podcast, pick a few shows to rewatch and re-rank. And the Ark in Space is going to be one of those.
Yeah.
Because as I was going down, I was like, well, I clearly can't rank it higher than the Ark in Space, which is a similar, different because there's more of a monster element to it.
It's got a wheel, though.
There's a wheel. It's that kind of era of like 2001 sci-fi, very influenced by 2001 sci-fi, white suits and like all these things.
Oh, yeah, that's very true. It's got a lot of similarities. Yeah.
But,
like space
I
wheels.
think we should rewatch that at some point, and I'll re-rank it because I have it ranked very low. Anyway, 98.
We'll do at the end of the podcast. We'll have a mulligan. We'll have a couple of mulligans.
Couple mulligans.
Take mulligans.
Like
and be like, I think that's the same.
So I liked it in the bottom half, but not like way at the bottom for me. That's where I had it.
Right. Yeah, a little different here. Nightmare in Silver, it just doesn't really do it for me. It's fine. It's in the fine category with me.
Sure.
It is. I don't remember much. I didn't remember much about it before I rewatched it, and then now talking about it here, I have not remembered much about it. Like, it's interesting. It's trying to do interesting things with the Cybermen, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's almost, I wonder if it wasn't a Cyberman story, would it be more interesting? Because it's sort of like, I think I was a little bit as a long-term Who fan, you kind of like, oh, and this is Matt Smith's first outing with the Cybermen sort of solo.
Is it really?
Yeah, I think so, right? Because they show up in the Pandorica opens in the Big Bang, but they're like one of several monsters. Like this is his first like sort of head to head with the Cybermen. So I think I was like fixated on the Cybermen, and I think I think also they had promoted it as like, buckle your seatbelts, folks. It's a new scary Cybermen, and like these are the most frightening Cybermen you've ever seen.
I didn't have all that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of baggage there. So I've got it at number 87, right by Smith and Jones and the Next Doctor, Amy's Choice, the Macroterror Colony. So in my solid Doctor Who section. I mean, it's definitely in a mid-range.
Okay, I'm glad that you ranked it in the Doctor Who list, because that is what we're doing. So I'm glad you put it in that.
It's actually number 4 on my Benson list, which is, and he's not even in it. That's how good it is. If you're ranking it Benson, it's very good. Wheel in Space, not one of my favorites. I've only seen it a couple times. It's one of those ones that, again, doesn't actually register that much for me. It is very slow and plotting. And unfortunately, I think as I was watching, I was like, oh, it would have been. And there are a couple interesting character moments. Like, again, I like Jim McCorwin, and I think there are some interesting little exchanges. They try to have a little romance going on between some of the crew members and stuff like that. It's like, okay, that more of that and less of the like 5 minutes of like, turn the laser beam 5 degrees, turning it 5 degrees, lower the laser beam, lower the laser beam, fire the laser beam, firing the laser beam. Like that's not interesting, but there is a tendency in some of these old ones.
How it is in space.
That's how it would be. It's just a lot of repeating. So I've got it down at number 151, I think. It's down by the Ark, above the Smugglers, because it's got Cybermen in it. And
it's definitely above the Smugglers. Jesus Christ. You have it below, what do you call it?
It's below Delta.
You have it below the Keys of Marinus, which is insanely boring to me.
Well, actually, I think the Keys of it's there. To me, it's very similar to the Keys of Marinus. It's a lot of sort of repetitive, like, okay, this is happening, it's maybe one day I'll reappraise it to
maybe
let
this will be probably
in the beginning. Now, here's where it is in the Doctor Who.
John, if you guys are not watching magazine, YouTube, you really should go to YouTube. No, Mind Probe.
Because I'm holding up a magazine.
Holding up a magazine. You could see this if you were watching right now.
But Doctor Who magazine would sue us. It is so obviously. This is the. This is the Doctor Who's great 60th anniversary rankings. Every you were able to fill out a form, and you give every episode 1 to 10 points, and they total them up. And Wheel in Space, the number 1 Doctor Who episode of all time, considered the most. No. It is number 17 out of 21 Patrick Troughton episodes, so it's lingering in the bottom. It is better than the Dominators, which is one of the other ones that we have watched. It is just below the Highlanders, which we just watched, and the Ice Warriors. So
I still think the Highlanders, because it's completely audio only, I think it would be seen as a little bit better.
I agree. I think after our re-listening watch there, I think it might actually, it could shoot up if they ever discovered it. And there are rumors, by the way, of 8 to 9 new episodes that have been discovered that may be launched, but it's not clear. They may be holding them out for the 60th. But anyway,
the thing is, they didn't discover the film; they just discovered someone who kind of remembers watching them.
And it's just on video, being like, and then I think, and then Jamie,
walked in
from the left.
No, and then they try to animate. He's like, no, from that part. Well, I'm gonna put our rankings into the old supercomputer, or the old silicon, the old
Cyberman,
probe
GPT.
GPT.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, Nightmare in Silver, classic. John and Porter disagree.
Yeah.
So we split the difference. You had 87. You're a little bit country. You ranked at 87. I'm a little bit rock and roll. I ranked at 14. We end up at 42.
Respectable.
Right next to Caves of Androzani, which was the opposite. You have it higher. I have it in the 80s.
Oh, and actually, I'm incorrect. It's right above the time that the 11th Doctor met the Cyberman. Closing time was the one with James Corden. He met the Cyberman.
Yes.
So he has seen the Cyberman before.
That's right.
And
that's right.
Thank you, supercomputer, for reminding me of
ranked
that.
it similarly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So then the Wheel in Space. Yes, lower down the list, 127. I think that's more appropriate where it should be probably, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It is right above Keeper of Traken and Boomtown, right below the Invasion of Time and Battlefield. So, I mean, it is what it is. Now, we are getting near the end of the Matt Smith era. And I mean, he's closing strong. The 11th Doctor in a solid first place position right now. I think
what's coming up isn't going to hurt him. I think
I don't think that's going to hurt him.
Going to do okay.
No, and so that'll be interesting. And I think he's first for both of us too. No, you have the third Doctor first. I mean, I know we haven't watched all the third Doctor, but that's interesting. That's interesting. He is the first for me with a bullet, man. So that's interesting. I like the third Doctor and the 10th Doctor way more than you, is what I've learned. And I like the second Doctor more than you. That's surprising to me, actually. Interesting. Well, anyway, you can see some of what I just talked about, not all of it, on the mindprobe.show. Others are in a secret spreadsheet that you will never see because you couldn't handle it. You couldn't handle this
the data. You would probably lose your mind. It would explode like an overwhelmed Cyberman.
That's right. But you can see the general rankings. You can also see the watch order on mindprobe.show, so you can watch along with us. You can see what we're going to watch next week's podcast. You can link to obviously all the old podcasts. We'd love for you to take a listen. We'd love to hear from you how you like him. And of course, subscribe and leave comments and ratings and stuff like that.
To us on
we're on all the things and Apples and
we are on everything.
Spotify's.
We're actually on NBC on Friday nights.
Yeah, they're really, the writer's strike has really hit them hard. So yes, we would love that. And then John, we are going to do we're doing another episode in 2 weeks. So
that's right.
What is on the next episode?
We get
is it some boring
episode by episode? No,
some boring.
Buy a hat and then hang on to it. Because it's coming in. We're coming in hot here. It is the season finale, folks, for Matt Smith. And Clara, we're going to find out the secret of Clara, which, as we've noted, we have completely forgotten about for the last several weeks. So we remember that that's an important thing. And boy, is that answered in grand fashion. We got Matt Smith, we got Clara, we got the Paternoster Gang, we got River Song, and we have possibly one of the biggest shock moments in Doctor Who history. And I won't spoil it because obviously if you're watching along with us, why? But it's coming up in the name of the Doctor. And because that story really takes us back to the beginning of Doctor Who. I mean, it's going back all the way to the earliest days here. And touching on that or making that sort of the motivation of this current story. I've paired that with a 7th Doctor classic story, all-time classic, the 7th Doctor and the first full Ace story. The season 25 premiere, Remembrance of the Daleks.
Ooh. Well, I'm excited to watch
as you should be.
Good Doctor Who episode.
Excited. Get that hat. Get a nice hat and hang on to it.
I don't have a hat.
It's gonna get blown off.
I don't have any hats.
It's gonna be like, boom.
I have 2
Boom.
weeks. Let me write this down. Get hat.
Get hat.
Okay.
Get hat, but not an expensive one because it's going to get blown off. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So only wear it inside.
Also, I shouldn't get a hat that has like a chin strap on it or something like that.
I mean, take your whole head off. That'd be awful.
Yeah. No
Get
chin
a
strap.
blowable hat. No, that's not. Don't say that. Don't write that down.
Get a hat and blow that hat.
Yes,
Right?
blow hats.
Blow hats. Anything with a hat, blow it. Yes? All right.
Sounds right to me.
Mindprobe.show.